Good morning. Today is Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearings. There's actually 5 cases scheduled on the agenda. We'll start with the first case, RPC 34024-339 at 1401 South Park Street. And we have Mr. Steinhauser.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if I was first or last, or if the withdrawals were going first, or
No, you're first, actually. Okay. So you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Okay, very good. So the subject, I didn't actually see Rob on the call. I think this one is with Rob.
I'm in person.
Oh, hey, Rob. Sorry.
Hey. I'm on the board side here.
Wouldn't want to start without you, buddy. So this one is Jefferson Plaza office building. It's originally a 1970 with a 1996 renovation, about a 278,000 square foot office building in Crystal City. The original assessment, 81.7 million. There's a revision to 70, recommendation to 74.6. We appreciate the assessor's, work at reviewing the assessment here. However, we just don't think it went far enough. The big, issue with this building is, it's gone from 20% vacancy last year to 48% vacancy this year. They had a large GSA tenant move out this past November that occupied, about 3 or 4 floors, almost 60,000 square feet. So that and a few other tenants also left. The vacant square footage went from about 54,000 square feet to 130,000 square feet. So when you look at the assessment, it was 58 million, 58.8 million, 58.9 million, 73 million last year. Now it's all the way up to 81.7. The assessors recommended a reduction to 74.5. It still would represent the highest assessment on the property in the past 10 years. And the property is the most vacant that it's been. I mean, when you look at those years, it had always been, between 20 and 30% vacant. Now we're talking 48% vacancy. So that's really the big issue, and I'll go over the exact, inputs that we use to get to our value. Our appeal materials start on page, I believe it's labeled page 66 of 123. I think it's probably most useful if the board flips to our valuation page, which is on page 69 of 123. And because there is such a, revised calculation here from the assessor, we wouldn't even really be talking apples to apples if I were to just kind of go right off of this, the page that I originally submitted. So I'm going to take the opportunity to just share my screen, and hopefully everyone in the boardroom can see it. But this is the assessor's original assessment here. This is the revised assessment. This is our Ryan pro forma over here. So less appeal issues than when we originally started. Obviously one of the big ones was the vacant square footage, which the assessor has corrected. Surprisingly, what we saw from the original assessment to the revised assessment was an increase to the rental rate for vacant office space. This was originally a non-issue as we were using the same rate as the assessor, $37.75. Now they're using $39.50. So that causes a pretty big uptick to the assessor's PGI, and is part of the reason that the assessment is still as high as it is. When we look at the market, we're seeing, an indicated rate of closer to, $38, $39 per square foot. We do have some support for that, but again, originally it wasn't an issue. Now it is an issue. When the assessor agrees that the rents at the actual building are closer to $36.75, so it is a bit sort of mysterious to see the vacant office space, tick up close to $3 higher than what is what they're actually getting at the property. Other than that, looks like we're on the same page for real estate tax reimbursement. The operating expense reimbursement, I think the assessor has overstated it by 15,000. Not a big deal, but it's a difference. We're using the same 25% vacancy. The assessor was using 20% before. We're willing, after kind of reviewing this a bit further, I think the assessor's $8 expense ratio is reasonable, so we're using the same. You can see the difference in NOI. The assessor's at 5.8, which is what they were at before. Again, which is caused by that increase that they made to the vacant office space. We're at 5.6 here on the NOI. I think if you look at the trailing 4 years, it's much lower than that. Cap rate is really an issue here. And, I know at the end of the day, the guidelines are the guidelines, and that's kind of how it operates. But I would hope at least that we could take a look at the effective age of this property, or the assessor could explain how they get a 1989 effective age here. You're applying a sub-6 cap rate to a property that's 50% vacant, and it's a 1970 build. So, we're thinking maybe it should be more like a 1979. Yes, there was a renovation, but not like they rebuilt the entire building. We're using the 1979, which is a 7.793 cap rate. So it is a difference. We think that's supported by studies, PwC, RERC. Everything we looked at was higher than 6%. And for vacant buildings, it's typically higher. We have similar below the line deductions as the assessor. There were also 3 tenants that were known to be leaving in early 2022, and we feel lease-up costs for those tenants should be taken into consideration as well. Another 5% of the building, and that's another 1.7 million in lease-up cost. These are the tenants: Sage Analysis, Rental Beast, and Microsoft. I'll stop sharing now, and just to quickly go through the rest of my appeal package. On page 71 of 123 are those cap rates that I mentioned, and the correct county rate for the 1979 year versus 1989. Page 72 of 123 shows the expected market rents in Crystal City as of 2021. You can see it's closer to $38.79 per square foot. Pages 73 and 74 are just some of our cap rate support, as previously mentioned. The rest of the report is really just the income and expense submission and rent roll. And that's all I really have. Obviously, the big issue here is the year-over-year increase. The assessment's as high as it's ever been. We think there are a few things that could be changed, specifically with the rents and the cap rate.
Okay, thank you. Perfect timing. Mr. Peralta for the county.
Yes, good morning. As Mr. Steinhauser stated, there's not much difference between the revision and the appellant's pro forma. The main difference is the vacant square footage that we are applying the market rental rate to. We're at $39.50. They're at $37.75. The reason for that is they had actually 3 leases, future leases, on page 83 of 123. All 3 were above $39.50 is what we're using. There was one at $42 square foot, the other at $42, and the third at $45 per square foot. So that's why we use the higher rate, because we have actual leases to pinpoint. When we're looking at the property here, it shows on the pro forma that they spent $4.4 million on capital spend in 2021. So we would have to take a look at the effective age do an inspection and see what the changes were for that property. We didn't get a chance to do that this time around, but we certainly will. With respect to the vacant square footage, we're using the same square footage as they're using in the pro forma, 130,325 square feet. We take that down below the line and apply the necessary excess vacancy deductions. The appellant is using a 1-year lease up adjustment of 1.7 million, and then that capital spend again at 4.4 million. That's the main difference. We did make an adjustment based on the excess vacancy. Originally we're at 54,000, now we're at 130,000, just like the appellant. Don't have anything else. I do actually have, there's about almost 30,000 in spec suites available for this property, and it's in the upper tier, upper floors. So we're suggesting a higher rents due to the fact that there are some spec suites as well. That capital spend that they indicated for 4.4 million represents about 6% of the agent's total value that they indicated in their pro forma. That's all I have. We're open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Metzgen.
I have one for each party. I'll start with my local party here. The department, you said that future leases that were signed or somehow gelled for more than $39.50. When do they start? When were they signed? When did they start?
They're on page 83 of 123, so it has the information there.
I'm sorry, I don't
Just
have
give me
it.
a second. I can take a look.
You got it, okay.
January 2023, and it's till 28.
When was it signed?
It doesn't say here. It just has it on the 2021 rent roll, so it had to have been signed prior to the first of the year.
Okay, so all of them were signed before the first of the year.
Correct.
By definition, otherwise they wouldn't show up here.
Right. General Dynamics is starting their lease in July of this year, or started their lease.
Yeah, but again, when it starts, that's speculative. It's when it was, contracted. For instance, the appellant said, well, we know that we have a big tenant leaving in early 2022, they announced, but it's not over till it's over. But in this case, it is over. They are signed leases or lease extensions.
I don't know if it's
during the assessment.
I don't know if it's the same square footage that he's referring to.
I'm saying two different.
Yeah.
Okay, I think if it's on the rent roll, it's been signed. The landlord's assuming. Maybe I get
Right,
it.
can I just want to jump in here on that same point. But Mr. Peralta, so did you say it's effective January 2023? So it might have been signed, but they're not receiving this income yet.
Right, but it speaks to the square footage. I mean the rent that they're going
The
to.
dollars per square foot.
Okay, all right. Mr. Steinhauser, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, if I may. So for those future leases that you're seeing there, 2 to American Systems and 1 to General Dynamics, all 3 of those tenants are already in the building. None of that is backfilling any of the vacant space. Those are just renewals or options that were exercised by the tenant. So it's not a new lease. It's not indicative of market rent for a new tenant that they're bringing in. They have these options within their existing leases, and they were exercised. And for General Dynamics, they had about 20,000 square feet. They've downsized by half of that. So they're creating more vacancy.
Okay. All right, Mr. Matzkin. Oh,
Yes,
go ahead.
thank you. For the appellant, different but related question, of course. In columns A, B, C, and E, you don't have any vacant office numbers in there, row 1A. So in those cases, this is a question, they're all just actual income from offices, and then whatever's vacant, we just don't know about? It's for the appellant.
Yeah, he allocates vacant square footage.
Well, I don't see it. I see blanks.
It's on 1A.
That's what I'm looking.
You're talking about the vacant square feet numbers that are right below the net leasable area?
4.9 million.
Where?
This is vacant.
Far right.
Oh, the far right, but that's just their reconstruction. I mean, I wanted to know what actually happened in the assessment period and the years immediately prior.
Right, but the county fills those in.
Oh, well, that's what they submit in the IND.
That's right.
Actual.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
So it's only actual. We don't know the foregone, what the county calls in 1A vacant office. I'm not accusing you, I'm asking if I'm reading it right.
I think I understand what you're saying, and yes, the answer is I think they've only filled in received rent.
Received rent. Okay, it seemed obvious to me, but I wanted to make sure.
I thought you were talking about the above column. I apologize. Or
Okay.
the above row.
Okay, because the county in D and F relies on that a lot. Those are big numbers in this building. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Okay,
That
other
GSA
questions?
tenant I mentioned, they left in November, so their rent was, they paid their rent, and that would be included in the collected rent, box through November, and then that is then vacant in November of 2021.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, other questions from board members? Mr. Hoffman?
Is the garage is not part of this RPC, is that correct? And
Correct.
that's shared between like 3 buildings
Yeah.
and it's separately taxed and everything?
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. All right, anything else? Mr. Yates?
Just, if the county, would you address the effective age again, what you said? Why do you think it's,
Well, for the appellant brought up that they spent 4.4 million on capital improvements for the property. So we would have to kind of inspect it and see what was changed with the property.
so you think it's more of a future? I mean,
If they
it's
spent
an old
it-
building.
If they spent it in 2021, then we're curious to see what has been done to the property.
I'm sorry, I can't hear Mr. Peralta.
If it was spent in 2021, we'd be curious to find out what has been done to the property and what, that money was spent on.
And whether it affects the effective age.
Correct.
All right.
Mr. Yates?
To the appellant, what was done, and you're arguing that the effective age should be much less still. Question.
Yes, that's what we're arguing. So there is a capital schedule that's included. So some of that money was TI money. Some of that was spent on HVAC refurbishment. Some of that was spent on spec suites on 11th and 12th floor. So they're really the larger spend is supposed to come in 2022, 2023, where they budgeted over 8 million, 8.5 million in spend. So I think they really just, maybe just started.
So spec space, HVAC, and just TIs on what was there.
Yep. Yeah. And that schedule for everyone is on page 85 of 122.
Doesn't change it.
Okay, any other questions? No? Mr. Peralta, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to focus on my page 7 of 123, which is the rent roll. I highlighted the new tenants or the renewal tenants that Mr. Steinhauser had pointed out. In the rent roll itself, they're stating $40.31 for American Systems, yet they released at $42 a square foot. For General Dynamics, they didn't include any rent at all. As Mr. Steinhauser noted, they're actually in the And again, they're at $45 a square foot for that space of about, I believe it was 43,000 square feet. So that didn't play into the factor of the average of the leases in place. We're again at the average that we have with the lower rents in the rent roll at $38.03. The county is using $35.75 for the leases in place. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Steinhauser, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure, yeah, and if I think I heard the assessor right, he just said we're using 35.75 for the leases in place, which does tie exactly into his calculation on page 7. However, when you look at the assessment, he's actually using 36.75 for the occupied office space. So I think at the very least, you know, we should be changing that to 35.75 for the occupied space. I think 39.50 is too aggressive for the vacant office. Again, keeping in mind there's a 6% concession factor. I think the original that was used by the assessor was 37.75, and that would tie into like a $40 market rent. The last piece again is the cap rate. I think this one has a older age than 1989. It's a 1970 build with a 96 renovation, facing a bunch of capital. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board members. What's everybody think on this? Mr. Yates.
I had a couple points, I guess, but biggest yanks is that you're going up 20-some thousand on a building with this much vacancy doesn't have a great releasing record. And an older building at that, even if it did have some effective age, I think it's high. And I don't know, other than the ones I targeted were the vacancy rental rate and maybe the expenses, but I don't know what anyone else would want to adjust.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel right at all, I guess, is the end result.
Okay. Mr. Matzkin.
I'd like to echo that. I thought, well, this is the same kind of building and same setting as we're seeing in Crystal City, and the valuations this year that we've seen, which is a small subset, down 1, 2, 3, 4%. This is up 2, 3% between the two of them. It's okay, well, there's something that we've missed here, and I, of course, thought it was the vacant office rent per square foot. But I thought the department saying, well, we've got signed extensions, and it doesn't matter that they're new leases. They have signed extensions year in advance for more than what the department is allocating as the value of the vacant office. And these companies could have moved across the street, you know, a year from now and paid less, but they're staying here. So surprisingly to me, the value really is in that $39 range, even while the vacancy is increasing in the building. So I kept looking for, as Mark did, where can I objectively reduce something or increase something else such that the valuation should be down. And the only thing that I got to was that 50 cents a square foot difference between column A and row A and column F, the 36, is that 36 and a quarter I wrote over it, I'm sorry, versus the 35.75 that the department mentioned. But I don't know that 50 cents a square foot for half the building is so definitive that we should jump on that. So I'm open.
Okay, Mr. Yates.
One thing I'd say about the releasing of the existing space, you're not doing tenant improvements. The tenants aren't running into the expense of moving down the street.
Yeah.
That kind of makes more sense if that space works for them.
It's fair.
to stay.
Said they
Not-
would stay, yeah. Yeah, I agree. Mr. Hoffman?
I mean, I just capped out the appellant's pro forma NOI with the county's guideline rate and then used the county's guideline deductions and came up with 68,140,400.
I did the same thing.
Change the cap, change the cap.
Yeah. And initially, that's why I was asking about the garage, because I thought 240 a square foot might be a little light on the building, but there's some complication because it's a condominium above a garage and you take a hit by controlling the whole thing.
So, Mr. Hoffman, so you used the 5.6 on the NOI from the appellant's revised?
I did the 5.344. It's 329 from the.
Okay.
sheet.
Okay, and then you kept the deductions below the line
From the test column.
in Calumet? Okay,
Yeah.
and so what was the final number?
68,140,400.
Yeah, Mr. Penaranda, go ahead.
The only problem that I had doing that, because I looked at both the same, was the expenses. I think the appellant is using a higher number. So the only thing I did is pretty much use the same column as the appellant, except with the expenses.
Good.
Using it to what the department has. $8 instead of $9. Everything else, the only difference is really the rate on the vacant space and some on the pass-throughs and the other income, which is about 15,000. But I'm using the same number that the appellant has and just reducing the expenses to what the county has. I come up with 71,972,400.
Say that again.
And the NOI, the value is 71,972,400. And the NOI is 5,616,000.
Yeah,
5 million, what was the NOI, Mr. Penaranda?
5,616,128.
yeah, I was at 72 million.
Unfortunately, Mr. Lawson, you came in late, so you can't really participate in this. But go ahead, other folks? Okay, you're good with Jose's?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
because the expenses have really never been over 2.1 million, so it makes more sense to use.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Okay, Mr. Penaranda, I believe you've got some votes here.
Okay, I'll move that we reduce the assessment to 71,972,400. And that would be by reducing the rate on the vacant space and reducing the expense. Just that. Because I'm using pretty much the appellant's number and the expense from the county.
Okay, we have a motion and I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. 5-0. The assessment's reduced to 71,972,400 based on column G using the county's expenses and below the line deductions and cap rate. Thank you, Mr. Steinhauser.
Thank you,
Mr.
board. Have a
Peralta.
good day, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, the next, which will go quickly, I believe Mr. Warren, I saw him here. Mr. Warren has asked to withdraw all of his cases. 3 of them are with Mr. Chikas. I assume, Mr. Chikas, you have no problem with the withdrawal?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Since they're all with the same, I'm going to make a motion to accept the withdrawal of the next 3 cases, which are 180070031, 2800403, and 2800466. Do I have a second to accept the withdrawal? Okay, we have a second by Mr. Matskin. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's 6-0. Those are accepted withdrawal. And then the final case Mr. Warren would like to withdraw is Ms. Roskin's. I assume, Ms. Roskin, you have no objection?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I will move to accept that withdrawal. Do I have a second? Mr. Penaranda is a second. All in favor of accepting that withdrawal? Okay. Unanimous that with 35001163 is the withdrawals accepted on that as well. Alrighty, that concludes the agenda.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blake.
Okay, does anybody have any other business?
That's why I was like, I was on the platform.
Nope.
Right.
Okay, then we will stand adjourned here at 9:31. I think that's a
And it
record.
says 12 minutes.
And re-adjourn tomorrow morning,
Well, we'll hear about it if it goes back.
Wednesday, October 12th, at 9 a.m.
I was gonna make a motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I looked at